Okay, so the first thing we need to do when we're looking at an image like this, obviously this is purely monochrome, so it makes life a lot easier, but first thing I look at when I'm looking at an image like this is to create the matte sketch. I want to be looking at the darker areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to outline with this chalk pencil so you can see the outline dark area. So I'm going to kind of come up in here into the pupil. I'm disregarding these highlights. I'm not worried about the highlights at this stage. I'm just going to go around the pupil, go through the highlight, almost creating a circle, then up underneath those highlights there, and then pick up this black there. Okay, we'll come round the circle there to the corner, then we'll just go right over the top. So really that's what we're looking to cut out. That's our dark area. There's a little dark area in this corner, so I just want that. And also this, we need to know where this line is. So I'm just going to put a little sliver over there. I'm only showing you with a chalk pencil. You don't have to do this. You can literally cut it straight out of the stencil. There's no need to mark out exactly where you need to be, but this is for your reference. So I'm just going to cut out the outline that I've created. It doesn't have to be exact because we're all going to be going in and amending a few things as we go when we get to the freehand stage, but the closer we can get to our mark the better. Try and make this pretty round. Let's just get that there. Okay, so hopefully it should just pop out of here now. That bleed's a little blunt, so probably need to put a new blade in this. Okay, so that's our middle section cut out. We no longer need this anymore. Okay, I'm going to cut the top sliver out now. And we want to keep this fairly tight, so literally just a couple of mil. You don't want it too thick. So keep it nice and thin, because all we're going to do is give us a guide. You can see how thin that is. If you go a little bit thicker here and there, it doesn't matter, but try and keep it as thin as possible. Yes, I've gone a little bit wider there, but I'm not too concerned. Okay, there's our sliver. Okay, and just this corner here. Just going to come down maybe about halfway through that tear duct in the corner there. Okay, now we can move our cutting mat out of the way for a second, and we can pop our eye into position. So now we have our eye in position. I'm going to protect the outside area because I don't want the overspray on our main board. So, and we're going to be misting from a distance, so if we can stop the overspray, it'd be a lot easier for us. So we're using our trusty application tape. What I can do is basically cut a straight line and just protect the top part up here. Because it's low tack as well, in fact what I'll do is I'll just tear that, because I've got enough room down here to protect the bottom, so I'll just put it close to this corner here. Maybe cover that corner there, and then here as well, because I don't want the overspray. When I come round to do this, I don't want it going on there. And I'll just cover that a bit there. Okay, so we're now protected. All I want in this area, the sliver, is a very light mist, like this, just to show us where that line is. So I'm just going to go over with a mist, and I'll show you afterwards. Just 2 passes. You can already see, if you do a close-up, you can actually see the mist there. And the same here in the corner. All I want is a mist as to where that corner is, because we use that as a guide when we're cutting out the rest of the map. And in the middle, we know that this is our black area, so we can go really quite dark. Try and keep your fingers, keep the stencil flat to the surface with your fingers, and just block in. Don't make it too wet, because you'll get skating. So just do one little pass like that, move on a bit, then air dry, then come back over. I'm air drying again, and then I'll go over that area again, just so it's real dark. We're using shading black, E-Tac shading black, so it is taking a couple of times to get the real dark area. Okay, now that should give us our first stage of our map. Be careful when lifting. You can see, we can just see the corner there. Let's remove the application tape, put that to one side. No overspray, as you can see. And if I lift this now, you can see we've got our sliver, which is a light mist, our very dark area, and our corner as a gauge. So I'm just going to air dry that a little bit more. The next cut we're going to do is the main eye itself. So I'm going to come in and we're just going to cut from there to there. So cutting that back in place, and I'll whip off the whole thing. Try and meet up with your previous cut, straight as possible really. So we'll take that out. Allow cutting that out of the way, and then because we got our corner, which is our gauge, we can line that up and lower our paper to our sliver, and we should match pretty much 100%. So because we're local now in the middle, I don't need to use the application tape down the sides, but as long as you keep the airbrush pointing inwards, this shouldn't be a problem. So this is where I need the second reference as a guide. I'm going to pin that up above. For a second. Let's put it right up the top there. Okay, so what we're looking at is the grey area here. Okay, but all of these highlights are throwing it a little, so what the tonal value you're looking for is this tonal value here. So it's not black, it's like a dark grey. Okay, so we want to kind of match that as best we can. So again, keep our fingers flat, but this time keep it pointed in. Distance yourself about 10 inches away and keep the flow to a minimum. And I'm just misting it in to the shade that I want. So I'll do one pass first. Try and keep it as even as possible. Not that it's going to matter if you get it slightly wrong, but just don't go too dark. So check our value. So what we can do is find our tonal value. It's round about value 2 on our grayscale value finder. So if I move that out of the way, I can see whether I'm near that. Am I dark enough? Probably not. A little bit more. I'm keeping the airbrush pointed in. Just as I run out of paint, I'm kind of near my tonal value, so perfect timing. Okay, so that's that one done. Now what we need to do is cut along this line. And there is actually, you can see 2 highlights here, so we need to go over those highlights because that's where the tear is building up before it comes out. And then straight up to the corner, and then up to our cutout that we've done already, and then down from the top corner down to there. So what we're taking out is this entire white of the eye. Again, off it comes to the cutting mat. So I'll just offer that up to the cutting mat, and then we'll cut along that line, go over the teardrops up to that corner, and then meet our cutout there. And then also come down to meet our cutout there. So the entire white of the eye comes out. Move our cutting mat again. So this is where we use the reference. I'm going to pan out a little because you need to see the reference as well. Okay, so we can now see the reference, and what we're looking at is this shade here and shade here. So as you can see, the shading comes down, comes along, but then fades out just underneath this teardrop here. So we've got a safe area, which is our black area, so we can start our paint in that area, and we know we're not going to go any darker. So if we start in this corner, we got black and black there, so we can hit that and then lead out of it. So I'm hitting the corner and I'm leading out, and then I'm coming around, I'm allowing the stencil to do the job for me. So I'm hitting sort of 50% on the actual board and 50% on, like we did with the rose petals. So 50% on the board, 50% on the stencil. And then as I come down, I'm going to come off, so it kind of tapers off into the teardrop to give us this kind of shade along here. And then I'll come back around again that shading is really quite dark in the corner there. Then as it comes round, it kind of gets lighter and lighter, but don't lose the white of your eye. That's key, that we keep the white of the eye there. Okay, and then we can do this side. So we can come right down to that corner. There's a big old shadow there. And then it kind of fades out a little, and then there's a shadow that comes down past the teardrop, and then it fades out towards here, towards the teardrop. So we go up there, come down and around. Okay, 2 more cutouts now. So we've got the teardrop, which we cut around up under the highlights and around the corner of the tear duct. Okay, so we need to cut those out. So off comes our reference. As you can see, we've got a nice shade to our eye already. Going to move that up a little. Take this off of here so we can see it fully. Okay, cutting mat. Put that on there. Put that there. And now we can cut out our teardrop. So I'm just going to go around the teardrop. Take our teardrop out for a second, and then the same with the corner. So all we're doing is basically creating a map sketch which we know is 100% accurate to the actual reference. We could do this light, but whilst we're cutting out it's a lot easier. I'm just going to pop this to one side for a second while I move the cutting mat. That's our final cut now, so we don't need anything else. Put an extra bit of tape on the top there. Okay, so we line everything up again as we've done before. This time what we actually want to do is double side a piece of tape, so fold it back on itself so it's sticky on both sides. Grab our teardrop, stick it to the back of that, and then pop our teardrop back in place. And we do the same with the corner. So double-sided again. This one's got to be a bit thinner and smaller, so you might have to cut it in half or just make a smaller one. And then we grab our corner piece and we just pop that in there as well. Now we can remove the entire outside because we have our teardrop and our corner piece in situ. Okay, so now we have our reference photo. I'm not going to bother blocking too much. I'm just going to make a clear line along the bottom here. Hardly straight, but I can use tape. What you want to be able to do is kind of move in the motion of the actual line itself without any paint, and then as you're moving bring the paint in. And remember to dagger off at the end. Shut the trigger off as you're moving off, so you get a nice dagger towards the end. If you remember the practice sheets in the beginning, it's all about the daggering off. So we do the same again. We've just got air going, and as we come around we start to bring on the paint, and then dagger off this end. Do the same again, air, bring paint on, dagger off. Do the same again. The slower you move, the more of a wiggle you're going to get in your line. So the quicker you're moving, you may not be as accurate going quick, but your line will be straighter. Doesn't matter, I've just missed ever so slightly there, but it's quite a thick line anyway, and we've got lots of shading to go over the top, so I'm not too worried. And as this is a beginner project, it's all practice. I just jogged myself there. I'm about, I guess, about 4 to 5 inches away, and I'm controlling the paint. Okay, so once we've got a thicker line in place, it may not look like that. It may be a bit more wiggles all over the shop. It depends on how fast you're moving, but that comes with practice. Now what we want to do is distance ourselves just a tiny bit more, so about 6 inches away, but this time we want a mist. So what I'm looking at is, if I use this application tape, is a mist, like there's the line. I want a mist to be about that thick either side of the line, and what that's going to actually do is make that look like it's rounded off. So I'm literally hitting the middle of the line and I'm just misting over it. Remember, still to dagger off, shut the trigger off. Do the same again. Shut the trigger off. And again. Shut the trigger off. And again. Shut the trigger off. You can see it's starting to look a little bit rounder now. And now what I'm going to do is just step up above the line with the same mist. So we're shading just above the line. Okay, and then we do the same. In fact, I'll give that one more pass because it looks slightly darker. Okay, and now we do the same from here over to there. Or from there to there, depending on what way you want to go. We can use this as our guide. The piece of paper there, so we can come out of that. I'm hitting the line 50-50 now. This as well, 50-50, and you can see already it's starting to make this look rounder. You can come round the tear duct and then dagger off downwards, not into the white of the eye, actually dagger off downwards. So we're daggering here. Okay, so we go over. You can round off your eye if it's not quite round enough. Go round, dagger off. Now you can see that that is looking a lot more rounder, and this is looking rounder as well. So it's almost bulbous, it's almost sticking out now. It's a nice effect. Airbrushing gives you that lovely gradient to achieve this. And just go until you're happy. What we want to lose is this real stencil kind of line, so you might have to get in a little bit closer on this side and just blur it up a little to make it look as round as this side. I kind of like that now. That's roughly how I wanted it. Okay, So that's the first part done. Ooh, get our teardrop back. You can stick an extra bit of tape in there and make sure that sticks down flat. I might even do that myself, because it will flap otherwise. It might be a little too thick. If I can make it closer to there, should stick it down a bit. There we go, it's not too bad. I can hold my finger on there. Okay, so texturing. Now we have our lines in place and everything. We have our three textures. We have our, what I class as the camouflage texture, which we used in the water droplet. We have this fluffy material, and we have our, what I class as our skin pores. There are three different sizes in our texture kit of the skin pores. You get one that's kind of fairly close together, you get one that's slightly wider, and then you get larger dots. So what this will give us is, if I show you here, nice textures like dots. Same with this one, almost like skin pores. This one is more of a mottled look, so this one is great for rocks and skin and all kinds of. I use this so much, this texture. You can see it's given us kind of like a mottled look, and then obviously our camouflage one, which is quite harsh. Yeah, the camouflage one, as you can see, is really quite harsh, so you have to be very light with this one. So what we're going to do is look at our reference photo, and you can see the texture in this top right hand corner, and in here as well, and down this side. So what I tend to do is I add the texture, so I'm going to use this one to begin with. Where we're fairly light, I can add my texture. I'm going to use one I've used before, which is a little bit thinner, and you'll see just by me shooting through it, we can start to see texture. And I can add as much texture as I want. I know this area is darker, so I've got room to play if I go slightly too dark. But I always do a bit and then pull back and look. Okay, and then we've got this bit that comes up and over. Over this shaded area here. So I'm just going to put some texture in there, and then I'm going to mist this area. Continue that texture up there, just a little. Keep it going round. Now I'll show you the camouflage. This is very light. Don't want to use too much here. I'm being very light with it because I know how severe this is. So I can use a little bit down there to show you really how it does stand out. Okay. And now I'll come in with the texture underneath here. Watching the white of my eye, making sure I'm pointing the airbrush downwards, away from the eye. I can add our texture first, then I can come in and see where this dark shadow is, and come around the corner there and basically fill it with a mist. So I'm doing this from a distance. I'm watching the white of my eye, I'm staying away from that and pointing the airbrush out of the eye. And now I want to start bringing in the shape of this shadow, the bag of the eye basically. And now I can see that I've got texture all in here, but I've got nothing here, so I'm just going to put some extra texture in this area, and then I'll come back in and fill that area. This is very good, this subject, to actually teach you texturing. I use this in the beginner courses in our classroom classes, because it actually really does teach you how to texture and how to erase. So as we come out of the teardrop, here it gets a little bit lighter, so we have to go lighter, and you'll notice on the reference photo there's a highlight that goes along there. We always try and save our highlights, so I'm actually going to draw just a very misted line along there, and no, I can't go above that line. So as I come around with my shape of the bag of the eye, I can come up and dagger off before, and when I say dagger off I mean shut the trigger off before I get to this line. So I can come round, this bit's very textured but it's light texture, so I'm going to keep it fairly light. It takes a little while to get used to spraying through something and understand how much paint you need, but that's the whole reason of me taking it off, having a look, taking it off, having a look, and trying to remember how much paint I'm using. I'm just going to put some texture in there. I'm still keeping it fairly light, even though there is kind of dark areas going on. There's a few lines as well, so if you want lines you just need to move in a little bit closer, and then I'll give it an overall mist. Okay, so we're near enough there. Probably a bit more texture underneath the teardrop. Okay, I can start back up here again. Let's texture up that a bit more. Okay, and I'm just going to push this out wider with a bit more lighter texture. And I'll complete the actual artwork just by going up to my tape. This kind of fans out a little bit over in this corner, so as if it's going off and then comes back in again. And that paint again. Okay, I've probably got a bit too much texture in there. I went a bit heavy. Even happens with me, even though I've been painting a very long time. So I'm just going to texture right out. I'm saving this highlight at the top here. So if you look at the reference, there's a really big highlight up the top, and I want to save that. So I'm still going to mist over ever so lightly and put a little bit of texture above it, just so it works with the actual design, and underneath it as well. So just a little bit. and as we come around here we get darker again. So I can go a bit heavier now on this side with the texture. There's a bit more going round, and this shadow actually comes just on the inside, so we almost want to brush along the bottom of that eye there to create the curve that actually goes around. And I'm leaving the highlight still. And then we've got all the texture on the outside, same as we have over on the left. So I'm now just going to pump in an overall. I thought there was some kind of blockage going on. There it is, it's gone now. That's better. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to do an overall mist in this area just to even everything up. It's lighter down in this corner. There is a bit of texture. I'll just pop a bit of texture in there, and then I'll just mist. Just misting on the outside of the eye, just so we can fill the entire piece. Don't want it too dark. There we go, just the outside mist. Okay, now we can use some of these textures as well, so we can bring in some kind of skin pores down in this area. So just to add a bit more, well, a bit of difference to our textures. Just mist, just keeping it as a light mist. So that's the start of our eye. That's the texture inside of things. So get yourself some textures, because you'll need these for the further tutorials as well, like wildlife and portraits and stuff like that. And that moves me on to erasing. Okay, so the four tools I guess that we use for erasing, in fact 5 tools, 3, 4, 5. First one is our dual-sided pencil. So we have coarse on one side and soft rubber on the other. We have a 2mm soft rubber, so that's really for very fine erasing. And then we have the abrasive glass fiber pen, which basically is very abrasive. It will take the paint off fairly quickly. And then we have a dual-sided rubber, again pink on one side, blue on the other. This is coarse, this is soft. And we have our X-Acto knife if we need it, if we need really sharp like hairs or stuff like that. So in this instance, because I'm using a crescent board, white board, illustration board, the glass fiber pen may not work as well. It works amazingly well on clay board, but on illustration board, because it's like paper, it can pull up the fibers of the paper. So to give you an example, I'm just going to scratch down and I can bring in these highlights in the eye, but it's actually pulling up the fibers of the paper, so I don't want to go too heavy with this. So in this instance I'll use the coarse side of the rubber, the dual-sided rubber, to really highlight. So let's try the X-Acto knife as well. Yeah, the X-Acto knife will give you really thin lines. Okay, you have to be careful with it because it will scratch the paper up, and we don't want that. So yeah, it's starting to scratch now. So we are limited with this crescent board, but if you was using a clay board, which is what I recommend, all of these would work absolutely perfect. So in this instance, I'm just going to use our razors. So I'm just going with the highlights that I see. It doesn't have to match 100%. I'm just creating my own highlights. Just to get the shape of the eye, or the shape of the highlights. There's a few wiggles in it as well. In fact, that feels like the actual correct side. There are a few that come in down like that. We will be shading over the top anyway. This is why I love clayboard. It works with all the tools. Okay, I've kind of got what I want. This area is really quite dark, and there's the reflection of the eyelashes above, so I'm just going to put an indication of lines in there. And now what I'll do is I'll just use the soft rubbers just to pick up so it doesn't tear the paper too much, but I want some highlighted areas in there, so I'm going to have to really get in there, clump a few together. And what we're going to be doing is going round the pupil with a soft mist. Like in the reference, you can see there's almost a start point for the highlight because there's a blur around the iris, so around the pupil, sorry. So I'm just creating some outer highlights. I'm not trying to match the reference at this point, I'm just doing my own. I'm mixing it up what I'm using. Okay. You will get dust under your teardrop, but don't worry about it. Just going to try and punch that highlight a bit more with the glass fibre, even though it is pulling up the paper a little. Just going to use the glass fibre just to get the brightness on it. Okay, I think that'll do the job. Okay, now we need to look at all the textures around, and because it's a larger area, I'm going to use the dual-sided eraser. And the key is not just to rub out in lines, the key is to rub out in a kind of random way. Don't keep it uniformed in any way, shape or form. Almost done a straight line there. You can see where I've done that straight line. It's really kind of showing up. So try and keep it as random as possible. I'm only using this in the very top because it's a big area. And I use it for large lines, like here, for example. I'll come in here and I'll just drag one stroke. There you go, and that's enough to give that indication of a line. The same here, another one there, and then there's another one, just a little one there. And then I'll come in and start clearing out this highlight. Try and keep it random all over the shot. Okay, so we start to bring that highlight in, and then I'll come in with a coarse rubber and I'll add little ones around it so it softens the edges, and almost like do figures of 8. And get in there, really take that paint off right in the highlight. There we go, that's bringing that out now. Then we've got all these little dots, we've got a couple of lines up here, so I can come in and I can just drag that down, create that line. If I need to, if you're using if you're using clayboard, then use your glass fibre pen, look, and it really takes it off. On clayboard it really will. There's a couple of lines coming out at the top here as well, so I'm just going to bring those in. I don't know what that is, it's kind of almost creases, but you can see them, that's all that matters. And then we can come back in and texture very heavily in the top, add a few extra dots around. As I move out of this main highlight in the top, I get less and less, so just need to sharpen this glass. Oh, it's right there in front of me. So all of these erasing tools and all these texturing tools are almost a must if you want to get into illustration art. That, like, you need to add them along with the curved stencils and things like that. So I'm just going to bring in a few dots here and there. So I'm just randomly putting a few dots. I'm going to kick a few into this, even though we're going to cover this with eyelashes and stuff. And I'm going to be softer as I come out of the highlight, so I'm just removing some of the paint as I come out, just so it's not one big block of a highlight in the middle. And we got some dots down here, so we can come in here and just add some random highlights. There's not much going on in here. This is a darker area, bar the main highlights, as I call them, like these. There's one in the teardrop there, and you got the two big ones, and then two at the bottom there, and those one there. But we'll put those in later. This is all the soft, subtle highlights, so almost texturing. So I'm just putting some random. Another line in the middle there. You could keep going all day with this erasing, but I think I'm getting the point across. It's just to show there's textures going on. Let's get in with the glass fibre, take out some of these. So the glass fibre is going to be very abrasive, so that's for real highlights. And you can always push them back like this. It's erasing a lot easier, but they're too bright, so you can always come back in and mist over the top again. You know, if you push you've highlighted something too much, then you can come back in and texture. You can spend as long as you want on the erasing. The longer you spend and the more you go by the reference, the more realistic it's going to look. So it's down to you how long you've got on the project, and what kind of time you want to put into it, really. Okay, that's enough for the highlighting side. We'll now move on to the challenging side of eyelashes. So from our beginner class, the practice sheets, we were practicing things called dagger strokes. So if I pop that on there and give you an indication of where this is, okay, what we're going to do is, this is our safe area, this is the dark area. So you've got a couple of options. You can either try the dagger stroke and start as a dot on your black area and then do your line and then push out like a dagger. Okay, you're going to have to reiterate it. So it actually gets quite thick and dark. Okay, if you're using shading black. If you're using normal black, it will come out quite dark straight away. And we can do smaller ones, we can do longer ones, you can send it any way you want it. Okay, that's your first option. Your second option, we cut our own stencils. So I can come in here, I don't have to use the whole eyelash, I can just use half of it, and we just offer it up like that, flat to the surface, and we get a perfect eyelash. So you can cut them out just on a piece of paper, and that way you know you're safe. This will get very wet and will build up, so you need to cut a few, but the benefit is you can cut them to any shape that you want to match the reference. So if I peel this back now, so first option is starting in our dot. If you want to stick to just airbrushing, then you literally lead from the dot and dagger off. Dagger off. Dagger off. So there's your first eyelash. Okay, to get it really neat, you can just come in, try and hit it dead sort of 50-50, so the actual paper gets pushed flat with the air, gets pushed flat to the surface, and make sure you air dry. If you don't air dry, you're going to end up with smudges, because it is really going on quite wet. And just do a few, air dry. Takes a little while, but the overall finished piece will look a lot better. And if you've done a few shapes, then mix it up. Remember, this black area is always your safe area. So I'm just going to put a few in. You don't need as many as what's actually in the reference. That's really quite a lot of eyelashes. So I'm just scooting around. I'm going to mix a few up. I'm only using the half of one on this one. Maybe some longer ones in there. Air dry. This is quite there's quite a lot going on in that eye there. Look at how long they are as well. Look at how far they come to the line. So make sure you don't go too far. I went a bit far with my airbrushed one there, because I was just giving you it as an example, but I went a bit long, so if you do a few of these, then they're not going to get too wet. Missed the beginning of that one. There we go. Watch how high they go. So look for your finishing point and your starting point. And just don't go above that. And just mist over that so you can't see the lines again. Air dry everything. That one's got a little fat at the end. Make sure you cross a few over as well, because they are a bit random. Only the odd occasional one here and there. Then if your stencils are dry enough, we can just flip them round and go the other way. So mix it up. I was a little bit early in flipping round, but just trying to mix it up a bit. I'm trying to be quick. So I'm just still going to black that out as I go. Switch up to the other one again, make sure it's air dry. Might have to cut some new ones. I won't for the sake of this tutorial, but just putting some blurred ones behind as well with some daggers. Like that. And then mist over it. We don't want that too bright in that area. Okay, so we can now peel off our eye drop and our corner of our eye. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to first and foremost just mist the corner. Look at the values, see how dark it is. It's more dark towards the top, so lead out of your shadow and come around. We can reiterate this shadow there a little. And there is a little bit of a shadow. We want to lose the stencil look, so just go over the corner and try and lose that stencil look. If you see any sharp edges, we want to get rid of those. In the teardrop, what we want to do is we want to start about here and be misting from a distance. Allow it to build and then do a little arc over to that side, so we create this white highlight there. Then just mist up a little, and that will create like a droplet. Very simple, but very effective. Okay, so now we've got to worry about the very thin eyelashes. So you can either do the daggers and be in very close. So I'll show you one. So you need it almost touching the surface and then out. Okay, I'll do another crossover that way. So we can do very subtle lines with an airbrush. Just be mindful of skating. I got a little bit of skating there in the beginning. Practice on a piece of application tape. Just mix it up. They're all over the shop. If you're moving when you do it, you won't get the harsh start of the hair. So like this one, for example, I've done that one moving. I should have done all of them moving really, like our practice. So we're actually moving before we bring on the paint. Like that. You can make them up, they're all over the shop, so you can go exactly by the reference if you want to, or you can just make them up. Now the other option is obviously we cut these out, but you'll have to be very thin with it. The third option is we come in with this marker, the edding marker. It's a water-based marker, and we start slow and then we flick off, but this is very black. So if you're going to use this edding marker, then you want to use it up the top as well. It gives you an example, but it's very dark. It's a lot easier to use that, to be honest, but if you want to get better at eyelashes and things like that, then the only way to do it is practice. And as this is a practice project, I'm probably better off actually using a carbon black rather than a shading black. These are too light really. So I could have used the ETAC carbon black. In fact, I'll show you the difference. Yeah, already I'm seeing the difference. They're a lot darker. Actually quite works being subtle anyway. You have to still run over a couple of times. Okay, that'll do. Okay, so quite happy the way it's looking. So now I'm going to go round the middle of the eye with a blur. Keeping it just outside my highlights. I'm going to put a few little speckles in the actual eye here because I can see them. So I'm just going to mist a little bit of texture in the eye. So I'm just going to pop this up here for a second. Now, for the vein in the eye, it's really quite faint, so you have a choice. Either you can come in and be very light with your airbrush and pick it up like that, or you can put a little bit of carbon black, sorry, not carbon black, shading black on a bit of paper, but add some water to it and use a fine detail paintbrush that just gives you practically water more than paint, because we want to keep it really faint, and then come in and just go for it. Just use the tip of the brush. There you go. And then we've got a very light one that comes in the top there, like that. That's all you need. So practice that on your application tape, and then go for it within the eye. Okay, so really now we've done everything that we can with regards to the shading, the texturing, the erasing, everything like that. It's now these big highlights. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our reference, our final reference, to cut out those highlights. Might get some dirty marks on my picture, but okay. So, using my chalk pencil, I'll show you, well, in fact, I'll highlight it with this marker. So you need to cut out this one, that one, the little one, this one, the one in the teardrop, this one as 4 separate ones in this corner. Okay, so you cut those out, and then you also cut this iris out here and allow that to flap up so we can line everything up. I'll show you once I've cut them out. In fact, I'll do it here. So I'm just going to cut out these highlights. It's a lot easier if it's on a flat surface. 1. 2. 3. Cut my extra bar there. 2 little highlights in there. You can either cut them out separately or just cut them out as one big one. Blunt, blade's going blunt where I was doing my scratching, so always make sure you've got a sharp blade. Two more. It's not until you put these highlights in that the eye comes alive, really. It's all about these highlights, these final highlights, really. Okay, oh, forgot the big cut. So, round the outside there. Make sure you stay away from that highlight. Okay, as you can see, that now flaps up, so we can move this out the way. Get a couple of pieces of tape. And we can use the flap to line up our eye. Your cut might be slightly different, but as long as you're lining up, you can see the line of that teardrop, tear duct in the reference, and line it up with that line, and also line up the middle, and you should practically be on the money. So we'll just stick that down, and then what we need to do is change up to an opaque white. Just make sure you're shooting, I'm using Createx illustration white, but any opaque white will be good enough. So hold it, everything flat, just a couple of passes. See my scratches now, and then air dry, and then move down to the next one. There's my scratches again. That's the glass fibre and the X-Acto knife. Air dry, move to the next one. Air dry, then move to the next ones. Air dry. Until you get it this white. So just keep going, try and hold it as flat as possible. And just make sure you air dry. It will go like a blue shift to begin with, and then eventually it will turn opaque white. Don't settle for the blue shift. Make sure it's really opaque white. Just going to air dry that for a second. I'm going to give it one more pass, and then we'll come in and put the extra little details. You will get a little bit of underspray because the reference is flapping, but we can come in and correct those with the shade in black if need be. So I'm just going to air dry everything because I'm going to remove it now. Put that to one side. And there we go. Oh, got a bit of a smudge from some paint there. But already you can see the difference that makes. So now what I'm going to do is on the reference that we've cut up, you've got all these dots up the top there. You've got the 2 in the highlight and the 1 in the corner there, plus 3 and 3. So look at your reference. And what we need to now do is go up very close and put those dots in. So 1, 2, 3, control the paint. You might have to reiterate them a couple of times just so they're brighter and they're not that blue shift. And then 1 in the corner, and then 2 in the highlight. It's probably not bright enough, this, dark enough where this is. There we go. So I'm just going to change up to black now, and I'm just going to fix the underspray. So using our freehand shields, we can now come in and just neaten a few things up. So using the shape under there, we can just neaten that up. And then over the top, make sure that's air dried. Just missed over the top there, just to take the overspray away. And then on the edge here. Maybe in there. Okay, and then we need to reiterate our eyelashes. Got a bit of water in mine, so. Over our highlight. Then just to make life easier, I'm just going to come in with a black marker in between the eyes, seeing as it's all black. You can actually go around the whole outside if you're not confident in actually getting rid of that underspray. There we go. And complete.